All right, guys, we're back here for part 2. This is Lino. We got our boy Valentin behind the camera. He's the one editing all the videos and making everything happen for us. Appreciate all the help, brother. So we're pretty much gonna do our fillers and our cap, talk about the temperatures, how much voltage we're running and a wire speed and all that stuff. And we're gonna talk a little bit about what type of gas we're using, the difference from using 75 argon, 25 CO2, and the difference of using 100% CO2. There's a big difference. It'll be a big difference on your temperature and all that stuff. All right, guys, so we're pretty much gonna show you, we're gonna talk about what gas we're using. We're using 75-25. It consists of 75% argon, 25% CO2. It's a more expensive gas than if you use 100% CO2. It's a little bit more expensive, so a lot of companies usually end up falling back. A lot of fab shops, they end up falling back and using the 100% argon. Right now on this one, we're using 75-25. We're running about 27 bolts and 450 on a wire. We're gonna see how it works out for us on the fillers. If you're running CO2, 100% CO2, you cannot be running at that heat. You're gonna have to turn down your bolts to about 23,300 on your wire. The 100% CO2, it runs way more hotter. You're not gonna have as much control like the 75-25. The 75-25 cools down your weld way faster, so it gives you that control over your weld, and it gives you the opportunity to run your voltage way higher on your machine and more wire. The reason is just always be careful on what gas you're using. If you're using argon compound, or 75-25, always pay attention to that. The reason a lot of shops pretty much fall back to the 100% CO2 because 85% is pretty much your welding and labor. Whenever you're running a project, about 15% is probably gas, consumables, and stuff like that. So a lot of companies end up falling back to 100% CO2 because it's cheaper, way cheaper than the 75-25. There's a lot of advantages and disadvantages. There's a lot of welders out there that are, you know, it's real easy for you to weld with 75-25 mixed compound than 100% CO2. A lot of welders have some issues running that, you know. So, you know, there's different advantages on that. So we're gonna start our first filler at 450 on a wire speed, 27 bolts. We're pretty much gonna do the same movement. We're gonna go side to side. So right here, we're pretty much gonna start right here on the bottom. I highly recommend, since right now we did a ceramic, we don't have no starting strip. But if you were to take the little tabs that we talked about, the little flat bar, we'll put the little flat bar right here on the bottom. You want to start off on the flat bar. We'll start off of the flat bar, and then you'll stop on the sides. Pause, 2/3 a full second on the side. 1, 2. Make sure once you get to the side, that's when you want to pause. You don't want to count 1, 2, and then step away from the side too quick. If you're not stopping on the side, you're gonna get undercut. Your weld is gonna ball up in the middle. It ain't gonna look too good for you, okay? Always make sure your nozzle is pretty clean. Right here, we got it full of buckshots, babies on there. Make sure you clean it up. There's, we have some nozzle dip if you wanna use this. A lot of shops and people use this to prevent the splatter on sticking on your nozzle and all that stuff, or they'll have a spray that you can spray on your plate. Once you finish welding, it'll keep all those BBs from getting stuck on your bevel or on your plate and then having a wire wheel and all that stuff. Make sure you have a 10 or 15 degree push angle on this. You don't want to be having too much of an angle pushing up or pushing down. If you're just pushing down your puddle on that, okay? So make sure you have a 10 or 15 degree angle, and always remember, stop on your sides. If you're getting a lot of buildup in the middle, that means you're not stopping enough on your sides, okay? So that is key. That weld is not gonna fall on you, especially if you're using 75-25 compound. So don't be scared to stop a little bit more on the sides. All right, guys, we're fixing to get started right here. Stop on the side. 1, 2, 1, 2. Make sure you pause on the sides. Make sure you have a 10 or 15 degree push angle. And make sure your nozzle is about half an inch away from the plate. You don't want to be too close and then your nozzle getting stuck on the weld you're depositing, or you don't want to be too far away and that gas not being able to do its job and cover that arc. If you're too close, it'll get stuck. You're too far away, you'll get porosity. Make sure you're pausing on the sides. Take your time. All right, guys, we're gonna wire wheel this. Let's check it out, see how it turns out.
What's this?
It's an art project.
Okay, I like it. Picasso. Yeah.
All right, we run the first filler. Make sure whenever you're welding, you don't want to skip a lot and then end up having little pockets on the side where it infuses onto the bevels correctly. So make sure you keep that movement tight. Take your time, pause on the side. So pretty much right here, we run the weave bead. We did not run a stringer bead. A stringer bead is just pretty much when you just drag it upwards, okay? So just remember, everything that we're welding right now is all uphill from the bottom to the top, okay? So we're gonna get started now. The next pass, we're gonna run one right from the side to the middle. Just remember, 10 or 15 degree push angle. So right here, we're keeping our movement tight. We're almost just dragging it up. We're adding a little weave to it just to spread it out. You still want to pause a little bit on the sides if you're doing the weave pattern. Make sure you keep that nozzle the right distance from your plate. We run the first filler. We started on the left side. Make sure you wire wheel every single pass. Don't be that guy, you know, and be slacking. Oh, let me just go over it. No. Right now we're working with 75-25. Make sure every time you're welding either stick, heliarc, whatever procedure you're doing, take your time. You know, it says a lot about you. Take your time, clean it. Now our next one, we're gonna throw it on the right side. You wanna grab onto the bevel and then jump over to the other weld that you just laid down and make sure it overlaps on this other weld. So we're pretty much gonna run the next one from right here, from the bevel right here to this one right here. Make sure you see that puddle spreading out and overlapping this weld and overlapping this bevel. You don't wanna go too fast and then leave air pockets on the side or lack of fusion right here on the bevel or stuff like that. So we're running our next pass on the right side, and make sure you're catching the wall and you're catching the weld on the left side. Keep that 10 or 15 degree push angle. It's like we always keep telling you, make sure you're the right distance from that plate. You don't want to get too far away and get porosity. We're gonna clean it up now. We run the second filler to our right side. Pretty much filled up the whole plate already. We're working with a 1/2 inch plate. We pretty much filled it up. We're still a little bit on the flush, about 1/8. Just remember, you're running Fluxcore. Just like whenever you're welding stick, you don't want to have it flush because once you run that cap, you're gonna overfill. You're gonna have an excessive cap on there. Leave it a little bit, about 1/8, a little bit under flush. So whenever you cap, you'll have a nice cap, or 1/16 over, no more than 1/8 on your cap, okay? So we're gonna start for our cap on the left side. And it might take us 2 caps, 2 bead cap, or it might be a 3 bead cap. All right, guys, so we're getting ready to cap this thing. Just remember, your cap is really one of the most, well, pretty much the most important one other than your root. Make sure you have a slick cap, so when that QC comes in and checks it out, there's really no repairs on that. You want a clean, nice cap and root. So right here, we're gonna start from the left side. We're gonna run the first bead, and then we're gonna go so on and so forth, work our way to the right side. Right now, we turned down our wire speed to 350, and we're running about 27 bolts. All right, guys, so we finished doing our fillers. On our fillers, we were running about 27 bolts and 450 on our wire speed. The reason was we were a little bit higher on our wire speed, so we're able to fill it up a little bit quicker, okay? So now that we're gonna cap, we turn down our wire speed to 350. We're running 27 bolts, 350 on our wire speed now that we're gonna cap. You wanna lower down the wire speed so you have more control on your cap. If you keep that wire speed at 450, it's gonna deposit a lot of metal and you're gonna have a bulky cap on there, okay? Make sure whenever you finish flushing it out, you don't want it completely flush with the plate. You want it a little bit under flush, 332 or 1/8 under flush. So once you run that cap, you don't have an excessive cap. If you have an excessive cap, you might run into some trouble depending on how that QC running the job is about his work, okay? Just keep in mind, if you are using 100% CO2, you're gonna have to turn it down to 23 bolts and turn it down your wire speed to 300, okay? But since right now we're using 75-25, we're gonna keep it at 27 bolts and we're gonna be running at 350 on our wire speed. Just a little quick tip. If you're at home and you can't figure it out, not every welding machine runs the same. You might be running a little bit hotter, a little bit colder. If you're welding and you hear that wire just poking on you, it's either you need to turn down your wire speed down if it's poking, turn it down, or turn up your heat, either or. So depending on the thickness of your base metal that you're working on, if you're working on something thin, you want to run a little bit colder than that. If you're working with some base metal that's a little bit thicker, you're able to work with heat, turn it up, okay? So you got to play with that, you know, turn down your machine, turn it up, or turn down and up your wire speed, okay? But you'll get there. Just the more you burn, the more you're going to learn. Little by little, you'll build up your experience and make it up there. So we're going to start right here from our left side, right on the line. Come in a little bit, left side, right on the line. You could either do a weave pattern or you could just drag it up, okay? So you want to watch your puddle, make sure it's going over that line. And then I'm weaving a little bit to my right side. We're doing a zigzag pattern on here. When you do a zigzag pattern, it'll widen up your bead, and instead of running 4 beads or 4 welds for your cap, you could cut it down to 3. All right, guys, so this one right here is pretty much our first bead on our cap. We're gonna run our second one. So we're kind of debating if we're gonna do 2 or 3. So if we do 2 beads, we're gonna have to go from here all the way down here to this other bevel, okay? You're gonna have a hard time if you're at home and you have a little bit of experience. You're gonna have a hard time trying to travel from one side all the way to the right side of the bevel. All right, don't rush yourself. You could 2 beads would be good if we had a smaller bevels. But right here, it seems like we're gonna have to run with 3, so we won't put that test on risk. If you're out there testing for a job, don't risk it by trying to rush through it and finish it off in 2 beads. Take your time, man. We'll run the middle one right here, and then we'll show you guys if we run a third one right here, okay? All right, guys. So we run our second cap. This one right here. We didn't get to go all the way to the side and fuse all the way to the bevel. So we're gonna have to run a third one. So right here, where we're gonna run a third one, is a little bit narrow. So if we're working with your third cap and it's narrow, we're gonna show you guys how to make a line with your grinder, grind into there and open it up a little bit. You don't want to leave it too narrow and then not be able to fuse correctly and then have air pockets or entrapments or stuff like that. So we're gonna open it up a little bit. We're gonna make a little wagon trail with the grinder on the side, and then we're gonna run a third one right next to it. We're gonna run a third one right here. We're just pretty much gonna drag it up. Whenever you're welding, you might get porosity, you might get wormholes, stuff like that. We're gonna show you on another video on how to fix that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're gonna show you how to fix wormholes, how to fix porosity, and how to set up your wire on your suitcase. A lot of people out there, yeah, they're welded, but they don't even know how to change a roll of wire or what's the correct tip to use on that, okay? So we're pretty much just dragging that weld up. Make sure you're close to the plate, about ½ an inch away from your plate. Keep that 10 or 15 degree push angle. All right, guys, so this is our cap. Check it out. We do have a little high spot right here. We would blend that in, make it a little bit nicer for the QC. Make sure you don't have any buckshots or you don't want to be arcing out on the side of the plate, okay? You can't have none of that. You want to keep your weld and your grinding and all that stuff inside your bevels. The less grinding you do on your cap, the better that cap is going to look, all right? So minimize your grinding. Over the years, you'll get better. Less grinding, you'll be a better welder, more production. All right, guys, that was pretty much the second part, fillers and our cap on that. Make sure whenever you're welding, before you start welding, get a little scrap piece of plate like we did right here on the side. You know, set your bolts, set your wire speed. Make sure you get it down good so whenever you cap, you throw a slick cap on there, okay? You don't want to be coming back and having to repair or it's too bulky, grind it down and stuff like that. It'll take you 5 minutes minimum. Run a little bead on that plate. Set your settings correct. If you got to turn it up or down, and then you're golden on that. We're not perfect. You're going to have sometimes wormholes, porosity. Stay tuned for the next video that's coming up. We're going to show you how to repair your weld, your bead whenever you get porosity, wormholes, and how to set up your suitcase. Big shout out to Repblic Testing Labs. They send us some welding caps from Pipeliners Cloud out here to the shop. Great group of guys out there. We got a project going on in Brookshire, Texas. We're fabricating a chemical plant, little plant out there. Texas Made Welding Services is ahead of that. We're the head contractors on that project, and they guys took care of us, got us set up our procedures to get our guys to go test out there with them. Big thanks to you guys, and stay tuned for the next video. Make sure you subscribe.